Hey guys, Jared Wesley here of Live Traders, and you're probably wondering what in the heck is that Phenom 300 doing behind me? Yes, it's fast. Yes, it's sleek. Yes, it's sexy. And most importantly, you don't have to take your shoes off at the airport. All those things are great, but you're probably thinking, oh, he's just flexing. He's just showing off. What in the world does flying have to do with trading? Well, in my opinion, there's a lot that flying has to do with trading. In fact, it's so important that it might make you a better trader. So today we're going to talk with my pilot, Will Nasser, about what pilots do to keep safe in the air and how that can make you a better trader. Stick around and find out how.
$400, $300, $200, $100,
All right, guys, I am here with my pilot, Will Nasser, and he's going to talk to us today. We're going to ask him a few questions about, is there any correlation at all between flying and trading? Will, thanks for stopping by today. I appreciate the time you're taking out of your busy schedule.
No problem.
So you've been a pilot for how long now?
For about 20 years.
Years. So how did you initially just get into flying?
I always wanted to fly since I was 40 years old.
And what was the first aircraft that you ever flew?
It was a small Cessna 172, just a small propeller airplane.
Okay, and what are we sitting in right now?
It's called a Phenom 300. It's an Embraer aircraft.
Okay, so you started in a Cessna, and now you're flying a Phenom. Did that happen like in a couple weeks or a couple months?
Nope, it happened in about 17 years.
17 years. So you're saying that it's probably unrealistic for somebody who has zero experience to go from nothing to taking this Phenom jet off the ground.
It's doable, but it's unrealistic. It's unsafe.
Hey guys, come here. Now just a little bit closer. Yeah, that's better. Guys, what are you doing? All right, this is right around the time in the video where there's several of you out there about to comment below going, geez, Jared, why do you have to put a jet in the video? Oh, is this another one of those Thuru videos? Enough with the cars, stop the political commentary, don't put the jets in the video. Hey, knuckleheads, think about something. I can't help you if I can't get your attention, okay? And then when I finally do get your attention, I can club you over the head and teach you properly. And if you think I'm kidding, then why does a video with pole dancing get 3 million views and has little to nothing to do with trading? Why does a video with Uber and a G-Wagon get hundreds of thousands of views, but then you get a hardcore content video, 30-minute, 60-minute lectures with really good stuff, things that you would pay for, things so good you can't even get it paid for at most other companies. And you're sitting here going, he's just another Furu. Guys, get your head out of your ass. I can't help you without getting your attention. And if you think I'm wrong, then why do those other videos have millions and millions of views? You know why? Because realistically, most of you, 90+%, you just want to be entertained. You should just go watch Gladiator. Are you not entertained? That's all it's about for most of you. Most of you aren't going to ever be real traders because you don't care enough and you're not willing to walk through the mud. This will be unequivocally one of the single hardest things you will ever do in your life. In fact, take hard, put hard on steroids, and it's harder than that. Okay, trading will be one of the hardest things you ever do in your life. And this video today about pilots and checklists is one of the most powerful videos I've ever done. It's one of the most important videos I've ever done because without a checklist, you are dead in the water. You are ripe to blow up your account, and what you should really be doing is spending your time on Wall Street bets. At least you'll have more fun gambling, but don't charade around as an actual trader, okay? So forget about the jets, forget about the cars, forget about the swag, and focus on what is being talked about. Okay, what is being said, and do that for all of my videos. And by the way, I put very, very little swag in my videos. I would say 90-10, 90% hardcore quality information, maybe 5 or 10% swag. So enough with the BS comments. If you don't like it, don't watch it, and watch one of the other fluff channels, because I'm telling you flat, the Live Traders channel is probably the best channel on the internet, on YouTube, in terms of becoming a great trader. Okay, this stuff should be thousands of dollars paid for in courses, and in other courses, they don't even have stuff this good. All right, if you can't focus for 30 minutes or an hour, that's on you. All right, so let's get back to the video and really pay attention. And by the way, right at the end of the video, I do an actual pre-trade checklist for you guys. Yes, one that's going to keep you out of a lot of trouble. So pay attention. Let's get back to it.
Unsafe. Okay, it's an interesting word to use. We're gonna come back to the unsafe part. So 17 years in the making, and you also fly some bigger aircraft than this too, don't you?
I do.
What are those?
It's a Boeing 777. It's a passenger aircraft. It's one of the biggest passenger aircrafts out there.
Okay, so you started on a Cessna. You occasionally fly this Phenom 300 with me, and you also fly Boeing 777s, okay? Now, was there any kind of learning curve going from a Cessna to a Phenom or a Boeing?
Well, I did it the right way. I did it from a Cessna 172, and I just moved up slowly, so I don't miss any points or any opportunities I get, and that's how I got to the 777.
Flying is obviously pretty serious business,
Yes.
okay? And I would say it's serious because, well, if you mess up, the consequences is pretty severe, right? It's a little bit different than a lot of other jobs that people have. They can mess up and maybe the Excel spreadsheet needs to be redone, okay? But if you mess up in the sky at 30, 40,000 feet, there could be a serious problem. So what are some of the biggest concerns or highest risks when you're flying? The things you just don't want to have happen when you're up in the sky?
Pretty much we are trained for anything that happens to follow the steps and land your craft safely. A few things that a pilot could not handle, which is, let's say, a broken wing, which really never happens.
Okay.
As far as the systems here, we are trained to handle any emergency that we have or we get.
Okay. So if you were up at 30 or 40,000 feet, would you say that fire in the aircraft is something you want to see?
I do not want to see that. No.
Okay. What about a loss of cabin pressure?
That's also one thing I do not want to
Okay,
see.
so those are two things that you really probably wouldn't want to see. But even though we can't foresee everything, that's just the way life is in general, you've been trained to handle those situations if they happen.
That's correct.
Right? And that is, I'm assuming, part of jumping from a Cessna, which doesn't fly at 30,000 feet, all the way up to a Phenom 300 or 777, et cetera, and so forth. And that's why you probably didn't jump there in a week or two, right? It took you 17 years to get there. So one of the things we talk about in trading is checklists and how important checklists are to become a really good trader, because like flying, although the consequence not as severe, like flying, we want to make sure that we have a strategy for every possible scenario that might present itself, okay? So we have an entry price, a stop loss, and a target price. So in trading, a lot of people don't think there's correlation to flying and pilots and all that other stuff, but I think, in my opinion, there's a tremendous correlation there. So let me ask you, before this plane, let's use the Phenom specifically, before this plane ever leaves the ground, what are some of the things, or what would be the protocols or procedures that you would have to go through before it takes off?
Takeoff is easy. Before that, preparation is about an hour. I show up an hour prior to flight with many preparation the day before. And then when I show up to the aircraft, I come in, I follow something similar to this.
Okay.
This is my own.
So is that a
And,
checklist?
This is called a checklist.
Okay.
And I just go down from item number 1 all the way down. I do not skip anything. And if
So
I
wait,
do
hold on, stop for a second.
Yes.
You don't skip anything on that list? I mean, because
I
that
do
list
not.
is pretty big.
Yes.
And you flipped both sides. I just saw you flip it. So you mean to tell me, I mean, pinky swear, cross your heart, hope to die, that there's not a single thing on that list that you skip?
If I do it, if I skip something, I have to start all over again.
You start all over again. Now, I think I know the answer to this, but tell the audience, why don't you skip anything on that list?
You can't skip. If you skip one, you could find out, but it would be too late. You would be in the air already and find out that there is one line that you skipped, and then now you're into an emergency that you might or might not be able to cover.
I mean, come on, Will, let's be honest here. I mean, everybody skips a step, right?
Maybe, but you have to understand that if you do, you have to be able to handle it when you're really in an emergency.
Okay, so basically what I hear you saying is it's not a good idea to skip any of those steps.
It is not.
And it's something that you would be foolish to do because you're taking your life and other people's lives at jeopardy or at risk because, well, safety's first.
That's correct.
Okay? This is something, guys, that traders just don't seem to understand. No matter how often I tell you guys, don't skip a step, don't skip a step, and I get this excuse of, well, I might miss the trade, Jared. It's possible, you know, by the time I get through my checklist, I might miss the trade. So let me ask you, Will, I mean, you've flown commercially, you fly this aircraft. Let's say departure is 12 o'clock noon, and you haven't gotten through the list for whatever reason, okay? Do you leave on time, or do you get through the list before you leave?
We leave any time after the departure time. It doesn't matter how late we are, but we have to follow procedures and we have to follow this checklist.
So basically what you're saying is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That list gets followed, even if it requires taking all those passengers in the back, being 15 minutes late, an hour late, possibly missing a connecting flight, but you will go through that list.
That's correct, yeah. If they miss a connecting flight, they'll eventually get there safely.
Right.
If I miss one item, they might not even get there. So.
Okay, so we actually have a saying in trading, and it says, missed money is better than lost money. So in a sense, that's kind of almost exactly what you said, but you said it with human lives, right? They might miss their connection, but they'll get there safely.
That's good.
And it might be later, but they'll get there safely. So to you guys out there with trading, you might miss that trade because you didn't get through your checklist, but at least you're safe, right? That missed money is better than lost money, because some of you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Well, just to give you an example, we were looking at a stock called QDEL today, QDEL. The stock dropped $80, 47%, I believe it was today. Now imagine, had you not gone through your checklist, you didn't place your stop loss, and that stock just kept going down and down and down and down. And God forbid, some of you guys cost average your position down, which you never want to do. All right, so there are a tremendous amount of similarities between pilots and checklists and traders and checklists. One of the biggest differences that I see is that the severity of consequence is far greater in flying, but that doesn't mean that it's not significant in trading either, because some of you guys are dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and on the flip side, some of you are dealing with just a couple $1,000s. It may have taken you months to save up, and in a matter of a blink or a moment or one trade, you've given that all up because of what I would call laziness, okay? So to you, Will, can you tell us just for fun some of the things that you do, or some of the instrument panel here on this Phenom? What are we looking at here, honestly?
Sure. Yep. This is a pretty advanced cockpit. This is called the Garmin 3000, and this is what a pilot has to look at almost all the time. Gives you an altitude, an airspeed, and what the aircraft is doing in relation to the horizon. This is just a map here, and we're sitting right at that point.
Where are we at right now?
We are Scottsdale, Arizona.
Scottsdale, Arizona. And is this a picture of the plane right over there?
This is a picture of the aircraft.
Okay.
It will show you if a door is open or an engine is running.
Okay.
This is all the temperatures that we have to look out for.
Okay.
Battery.
Now, would you check all of these systems to make sure they're operating properly before you?
I do check most of it, and the aircraft checks probably about 50%. The reason why I said this is pretty advanced is the aircraft does a self-check instead of the pilot, and if there is something wrong, it shows you there is something going on behind this panel.
Okay. Now, one other thing we didn't touch upon is, do you actually physically go outside of the aircraft, walk around it, kick the tires, so to speak, before you?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Now, what would you be checking, or what would be the importance of that?
We check almost pretty much everything outside. We check the engine intakes, make sure nothing is blocking it. We check the tires, we check the oils, we check the hydraulics, and we check the shape of the aircraft, the wing and the tail.
See if there's any nicks or dents or something that might affect flight.
Yes, and there is also a checklist for that. So I have that checklist out when I do my walk around.
So basically then, you're not only trusting the computer, which probably does a good job. So in essence, you almost have a triple check. You basically have your checklist, you have the computer check, and then you have a visual check when you walk around the aircraft. Is that kind of accurate to say?
That's exactly it, yes.
Okay, and again, I'm assuming that's because if something gets skipped or missed, the consequence of it is pretty severe at 30 or 40,000 feet.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Seems like we keep coming back to the same theme, and that is stay within the confines and boundaries of the aircraft that they recommend. Follow your checklist, and if you do all those things, you have an extremely high likelihood of getting to where you're going very safely.
Yes.
Obviously, nothing is 100%, but you're going to be as close as you can possibly get to that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you think of, other than a bird striking, or something like, can you think of any reason you would ever deviate from your checklist or safety protocols?
I would deviate from this normal, it's called a normal checklist, if there is an emergency. However, we do have an emergency checklist that we follow when we get there.
So you're basically saying there's a checklist for the checklist.
Yes.
I see. And all that, again, comes down to safety. And in fact, that checklist, if you want to put it up one more time here, that checklist says before takeoff, before landing. I mean, it's color-coded pretty clearly and pretty easily. Let me zoom in on that right there, okay? And it says leaving the airplane, shut down, after landing, after takeoff, descent. I mean, it's kind of hard to miss any one of those blue bullet points. Like, I mean, probably an elementary school kid could not do this, but they would at least understand, oh, before takeoff means before takeoff, right? Before we land means, so even for adults, they've made this very quick and very clear so that nothing gets skipped and nothing gets missed. And I think a lot of that, guys, is because the consequence is so severe. So when you think about it, your trading consequence is not as severe as that. But when you just heard Will say, if there's an emergency, I might deviate from this list. And I'm sure at that very moment, a lot of you out there go, ooh, great, this is my opportunity to not use my checklist. But then right after that, he said, I go to my emergency checklist. So it's a checklist of the checklist or another checklist after the checklist. So you might want to consider the same thing. If there's something unexpected in your trading, have an out, right? Have something that says, look, if something happens outside of my trading plan, then I immediately exit the position. Do something that just says, you know what, this is uncharted territory. I need to just walk away from this, okay? So Will, I wanted to say thank you for the time that you've given us today. I think there's a lot of similarities between traders and flying and pilots. So if any last thoughts, anybody out there that might want to become a pilot, any advice for them?
It's pretty simple. If you follow the steps, go from hour number 1 and just work your way up slowly, as safely as you can.
Okay, and when you say as safely as you can, would you recommend that they have an instructor or go to flight school?
Oh yes, absolutely. You have to have an instructor, and he will let you know when you're ready for the next step.
So you mean that you just don't go out and buy an airplane and walk and fly it?
If you like to do that, but I wouldn't.
Why wouldn't you do that?
It's unsafe.
It's unsafe, I see. I only ask you because we have a lot of people that open up trading accounts with no experience whatsoever. They call up E-Trade and they're like, here's 50 grand. I'm just gonna go trade. And they have no experience and no idea what they're doing. So I guess you could do that in flying, but one, I think it would be illegal to take a plane off the ground without a license.
That's correct.
By yourself, that is.
Yes.
Okay. And the consequence of it potentially could be very, very severe. So then you're recommending get an instructor, go to flight school, maybe even at some point learn in a simulator depending on how complicated the aircraft is, and then you work your way up the ladder, and the better you get, the bigger aircraft, the faster the aircraft, the higher you fly, there's more things that come into play, yes?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and therefore by the time you get to those levels, you're probably prepared for them, or ready at least for that next step?
Yes, and it will be a lot more enjoyable, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. Guys, what I was getting at there was simply a lot of you come in with these large accounts with no experience, no instructor, no education, and you just throw money at the market. One of the things here at Live Traders that we talk about is use very small risk. In fact, you should start in a simulator for at least a month. Why? You want to learn the buttons of your platform, buy, sell, short, cover, all those things, and understand how you get in and out of positions, how your charts work. That's just normal life, right? It seems like common sense, but apparently that's becoming more and more of a superpower each day. And on top of all that, as Will was saying, you don't just jump into a Cessna and go to a Phenom or a 777. Well, this relates to risk. You don't just go from $5 risk to $500 or $5,000 risk. You go from 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, etc., and so forth. And you build that over time. Trust me, the market will be here next week, next month, and next year. And if the market isn't here, you and I won't be here either, okay? Because the largest companies in the world will go out of business, all right? And it'll be the Stone Ages. You won't have to worry about it, all right? So do it properly. So I want to say thanks, Will, again for the time. We appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, and we'll catch up with you again in the future if you don't mind.
My pleasure. Yes.
Thanks, Will. All right, guys, I'm Jared Wesley of Live Traders. We'll get back at it again next time.
All right, I told you guys that we go over an actual pre-trade checklist. Just please keep in mind that not everybody's checklist will be exactly the same. All right, it should generally be the same, but there might be one or two differences in there. For example, I don't like to take 3-bar plays that are more than 3 days up on the daily. Every once in a while, I'll go as much as 4 days up on the daily if they're narrow range days. Some people say, well, I don't want to take a 3-bar play that's more than 2 days up on the daily. And that's okay, as long as you're erring on the more conservative side instead of the more aggressive side. For example, I wouldn't agree with somebody that says, hey, 6 days up on the daily is acceptable. So there is some flexibility in there, but the general requirement should be very similar. So here we have 3-bar play must-haves, and then we have like-to-haves. And you'll notice there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of these, okay? And at the bottom here it says a pattern must have at least 7 must-have qualities. So 7 of the 9 must-have qualities, okay? And then at least 3 of the like-to-have qualities. So basically 10 out of about 15 of these things here, which is about, 2/3, 3/4 of them, etc., okay? Now, you can see which ones are more valuable to you as you gain more experience. I like to have as many of these as possible. So when it says at least 7, I would prefer to have all 9 of them, to be honest with you, because those types of patterns fail far less frequently than if you have fewer of these must-haves and like-to-haves, okay? But here's the thing. As we talked about in the video with Will, many of you are glossing over these things. You're not actually going check, 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 check. You're just going, oh, I think it has that. Oh, I think it has that. And I see, you know how many times I see people take a 3-bar play when bar 1 and bar 2 are nowhere even close to equal? Bar 2 is clearly a higher high by 30, 40, 50 cents. Just because it's narrow range doesn't mean it's a resting bar just because it's narrow range, okay? Or, for example, it says wide range igniting bar over a significant pivot, first or second bar of the non-extended move. You know how many times I see people take 3-bar plays that are up 4 bars in a row? That's not a 3-bar play. So you're not going through your checklist. You know what's another big egregious mistake that I see people making? Taking trades that have little to no volume. All right, they'll be taking 2, 3, 4, 5,000 shares of a stock, and the stock's trading like 100,000 shares for the entire day, and it's 11 o'clock. Why? You're going to get ridiculous slippage on that on entry, and if you stop out, you're going to lose a lot more than 1 R, okay? So this is a good way to do it. Go through the checklist, must-haves, like-to-haves, and it's always, because human beings are generally visual, it's always good to have pictures of a perfect pattern. And then, as you'll see on the next slide here, all right, there's also an actual real chart. This is an example of a great chart. Now, what this doesn't have and what you need to have is also a picture of the daily chart. So in a minute here, I'm going to take a look at a trade on Roku that was a little bit older, but you'll get the idea. And we're going to use the pre-trade checklist and go, okay, is this an acceptable trade on Roku if we use the pre-trade checklist? But you can see over here, this checks all the boxes. This is exactly the kind of 3-bar play that you want to be taking. Again, assuming the daily is good, okay? And this is exactly the type of bearish 3-bar play you want to be taking, okay? Let's take this one step further before we take a quick look at that Roku trade, all right? And guys, just so you know, this is right out of the Trading Plan Essentials book. It's a 65-page book, okay, that shows you, teaches you how to build a trading plan. And these 2 or 3 pages are directly out of it, all right? So for example, this is a slide I've never shown before, pre-market and intraday routine. This is part of your checklist, okay? Remember, trading is a business. Take it seriously, all right? If you want to watch pole dancing, that's on you, all right? If you want to make money, you need a pre-trade checklist, okay? Be at your desk 45 to 60 minutes before the market opens. Check any major news. You're going to go down this list. There's 11 things on this. And then intraday routine, ABS, always be scanning. You're going to be doing all of these things all of the time. Well, here's one more page to it. And this is your daily routine. Pre-market routine, intraday routine, weekend routine, daily routine, everything. Okay? You need to be doing these things. What the problem you're having is you're skipping steps because it's not written down. Or if you do have something written down, you're so worried about FOMO, fear of missing out, that you just jump in the trade anyway and go, oh, I'll figure the rest out later. Don't do it. You wouldn't get in your car without your seatbelt on. You wouldn't let your 12-year-old drive your car on the highway. Well, why are you trading like this? Guys, the market is a very difficult place to make money, and the market doesn't care about you. Trust me, you're just a number to it. It doesn't even know you. It'll take all your money and not feel guilty. How could it? It doesn't know you. So please put a pre-trade checklist together, okay? Make it very detailed, very specific, so that it'll keep you out of trouble. I would rather have it be overly restrictive than less restrictive. I'd rather have you take fewer trades than more trades. You can always adjust it later. But remember, your number one job in trading is always money management, controlling risk. If you learn how to control risk, you will never, ever be in serious trouble. You'll never be featured on a Wednesday edition of When Will the Insanity Stop? You'll never be featured on Wall Street Bets. Guys, to win, to succeed, you first have to last. So let's take a quick look at that Roku trade and we'll compare it to some of these general entry requirements, okay? Okay, guys, like I said, we're gonna go over a Roku trade here. We're actually gonna go over 3 trades, but I want you to really dig deep into this. And if you take a look, we always start with the top-down approach, which is the daily chart with your checklist. Because if you can't get past the daily chart, the rest of your checklist just doesn't matter. Okay? So always start with the higher time frame, especially if you're going to trade off a 2-minute, 1-minute, 5-minute chart. So we look at the Roku here on the left. Wide range igniting bar. So we have a gap up and a wide range bar on volume. So check 1. It's a wide range igniting bar from a non-extended move. So we're doing good so far, okay? Bar number 2, is it a narrow range resting bar in the upper 50% of bar 1? Check. Does it have a higher high? No, it doesn't. It has actually a little bit of a lower high, but they're relatively equal highs. Check. Now, real quick comment, side note, guys. Given the choice between bar number 2 having a higher high slightly or a lower high slightly, I would rather have the lower high. Why? Because a lower high means it's a resting bar. Remember, relatively equal. On a 1-minute chart, that could be a couple pennies. On a daily chart, it could be as much as 50 cents or $1. Okay, relatively equal. And it also depends if it's Amazon or Bank of America. So the question or problem we start to run into, so far we're doing great, but then you look to the left and you go, shoot. Is it taking out the pivot to the left? And the answer is no. But the level and depth of penetration is about 90%. So considering the volume on this bar, how wide this bar is, and it's penetrating 90% into prior resistance enemy territory, there's a much higher likelihood that Roku breaks above this pivot area. Okay, so we have a couple choices. We can say, all right, I'm not even going to look at Roku till it gets up to like 168, something like that. Or you can say, 90% penetration is good enough. Now, again, this has to be in your pre-trade checklist. And to be honest with you, new traders shouldn't do that. If you're a brand new trader, it has to be breaking that prior pivot. Don't even mess with it. If you're experienced and you've seen this happen before and you have a good pre-trade checklist and profitable statistics to prove it, you probably can get away with this. So there's the daily. Then you're going to drill down to the lower time frame. And what do we have? Wow. 2 3-bar plays. One on the daily, one on the 5 minutes. A wide range igniting bar. Good. Okay. Is it coming from a non-extended move? Yes. Is bar number 2 narrow range in the upper 50% of bar 1? Yes. Is it a relatively equal high? Yes. It's about a 10 or 20 cent difference, which is borderline because it is a higher high here, but it should be close enough. But we're dealing with the same issue that we had on the daily. Can it get over 166 to 167? And it's the same problem we're dealing with up here. In this case, the answer ultimately was yes, but you didn't know that before you took the trade. So in my opinion, for a newer trader, this is one you would not have taken. I know what you're thinking. What, are you kidding me, Jared? That thing's perfect. It's not perfect. The checklist tells you it's not perfect. It's not breaking over the pivot on the daily. It's not breaking over double top pivot on the 5-minute chart. So again, as an experienced trader, you have a little bit more flexibility because of your experience, okay? That's kind of like a pilot using VFR. It's like, okay, the weather's not great, but it's not terrible. A new pilot, don't even fly in it. If it's not crystal clear blue skies, don't fly in it. Experienced pilots is a little bit gray out, but it's not a hurricane, so I can fly in that. New traders, don't take this trade. And I know what you're thinking. You're having FOMO right now. And then the problem is it triggers at 166, the stop's 164. You don't take it. You do the right thing, and it rips $10. And what happens? You have FOMO. And now the next time this pattern happens, you take it, and it doesn't work. And now you're tongue-tied and twisted. You don't know what to do. Guys, when you're new, it's always better to err on the side of caution. Be more conservative, okay? Let's go to the next slide. All right, this is work, W-O-R-K. Now, we look at the daily chart, and you're up 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars, and then this is the 4th day up today, okay? So here's the rub. There's a pivot topping tail, but you're taking out this pivot to the left right here, as well as this pivot with these 3 days up. So the question is, per the pre-trade checklist, we're good. It says can't be more than 4 days up. Well, this is 4 days up today, right? So you're coming into today 3 days up, and then this stock is gapping up slightly. So per the checklist, we're okay. So now our job is to drill down to a lower time frame and look for an entry. What do we get? Whoa, beautiful. Look at this. Wide range green bar, okay? Igniting bar, yes. First or second bar of the move, yes. Taking out resistance to the left, yes, okay? Bar number 2, relatively equal high, almost exactly, yes. In the upper 50% of the range, yes. Good volume, yes. You can't see it, but the spread wasn't terrible. Is the risk to reward good enough? Yes. Is it within its average trading range? Yes. I mean, we're just popping off the checklist here. Check, 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 check. You're going to get in at 31.50. Your stop's going to be 31.25. And guess what? This thing went 75 cents. That's 3 to 1 on your money, right? 31.25 stop, 31.50 entry, 25 cents, and it went about 75 cents in 15, 20 minutes. Why? Because you followed your checklist, right? You followed your checklist. Okay, so you can see on the one trade, probably not good enough on the checklist unless you're very experienced. On the other trade, WORK, it was good enough, okay? And it met most of the requirements on the checklist. You have all the must-haves that you needed, all the like-to-haves that you wanted, okay? And that says, all right, pull the trigger. The problem is most of you don't have a checklist, or if you do, you're not following it because your emotions are getting the best of you. Don't let your emotions get the best of you, guys. Okay? I mean that. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. All right? So I hope that you guys enjoyed this lecture. All right? Pilots and checklists. I know maybe the interview section, it can be boring here or there. I thought it was interesting because I love flying and I fly frequently. All right? But there are so many similarities between pilots and checklists and traders and checklists. The reason pilots use them so often, consequence. It's unbelievably severe if you're wrong. People's lives are at stake if you're wrong. Most of you out there are not treating trading in the same way. If you treated trading like life or death, you wouldn't do most of the silly things that you do. Okay? So, I'm Jared Wesley, guys. If you like this video, please click the like button. All right? If you like this channel, please subscribe to the channel. There's so much awesome content on this channel. All right? So, again, Jared Wesley of Live Traders. We'll get back at it again next week.